All right, the NFL starts in 1 month, which means fantasy football also starts in 1 month. So it's time to get your fantasy football team in order. So today, I'm going to give you guys my fantasy football guide on how to draft your team. I'll give you guys my sleepers, my busts, and my must draft players to help your team be the best it can be. So let's dive right in. So one thing to know about me is that the first time I ever played fantasy football was last year, and I somehow won. I'm not sure if I was just in a bad league or if it's beginner's luck, but to prepare this year, in case I'm in a more difficult league, I created an entire fantasy football draft sheet with all the overrated, underrated, who I'm going to avoid and who I'm going to get, all those things just listed on it. So I'm going to go over and summarize it today if you guys want to use it as well. Just a quick side note, I typically grab my wide receiver and running back in rounds 1 or 2, and then my quarterback and tight end in rounds 3 and 4. And then from rounds 5 all the way to 14 is typically like an extra quarterback or tight end or two, and then a ton of wide receivers and running backs because they are the best position to get, trust me. And then 15 and 16, that's where you take your kicker and defense and special teams. If you take it any higher than that, you're going to be cooked. You do not need it earlier than that because there will be plenty of options. Get the wide receivers and running backs first, and then an extra quarterback or tight end or something else. Going over this list pretty quickly, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my top 5 to 7 players per position when drafting your fantasy football teams. So for quarterback, you're going to want to get Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, or Jayden Daniels. For running backs, you're going to want to get Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Derrick Henry, or Kyren Williams. For wide receiver, you're going to want to get Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Malik Nabers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, or Brian Thomas Jr. For tight ends, you're going to want to get Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, or TJ Hawkinson. And then kickers, you're going to want to get Jake Bates, Brandon Aubrey, Chris Boswell, Cameron Dicker, or Jake Elliott. And then for defense and special teams, you're going to want to get the Broncos, the Ravens, the Eagles, the Texans, the Browns, and the Lions. So now that you know my must-draft players, it's time to move on to my sleepers. So my sleepers are Baker Mayfield and Justin Herbert for my quarterback, Tyler Warren and Jonnu Smith for my tight end, Jackson Smith-Njigba and T. Higgins for my wide receiver, and then James Conner and Bucky Irving for my running backs. And now some busts that you guys should definitely avoid are Patrick Mahomes and Anthony Richardson. These guys cannot be trusted. Do not draft them. Next is Ramondre Stevenson and Alvin Kamara. These guys are just kind of getting older and you don't want them on your team. Then wide receivers are Devontae Adams and Terry McLaurin. Because of the recent Terry McLaurin trade, I'm not quite sure where he's going to end up quite yet, but I don't think anywhere is going to suit him too well other than Washington because he was the wide receiver 1 there. And then Devontae Adams is also going to take a step back, being the wide receiver 2 below Puka Nacua. And then my tight ends are Evan Engram and Kyle Pitts because Kyle Pitts has never really done anything extraordinary during his career. And then Evan Engram just left the Jaguars where he was a very good tight end for the Broncos. So I don't know what he's doing. So I have 3 final tips for all you guys. The first one is trust your gut. It'll probably end up being the right decision. I trusted my gut with Jackson Smith-Njigba a year ago, and he turned out to be a great receiver for me. He got a ton of yards, especially since Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf weren't doing a ton of production. So he really helped step up, and he was one of the better players on my team. My second tip for you guys is to hold off on the rookies. Do not draft a rookie unless you have to, or absolute last round you decide to get a rookie. It's not the best decision because they haven't played football before in the NFL, and they're probably not used to it. Jayden Daniels was surprisingly good, but he wasn't even the better quarterback in fantasy last year. So just hold off on the running backs. I know Ashton Jeanty is probably going to go high, maybe Travis Hunter too, but hold off and wait for them until the later rounds. My third and final tip for you guys is to get the first strings before the second strings. If you're deciding between a first string running back and a second string running back, get the first string running back first because they're going to get more touches, and that's going to help your team more because the more they play, the more points they score. That's how it works. So get the first strings before the second strings. As always, thank you so much for watching, and let me know if any of these tips were helpful for drafting your fantasy football team.